Well, here I am talking about some experiences I had in Germany whilst being attached to the British Army. Uh, One of the things I used to do was travel around to various camps to see what they're up to. And at one stage I was attached to a guided missile unit. They had corporal missiles, which were very good as training aids because they employed several different forms of guidance to control the missiles. However, I arrived at this place and was met by an officer who was going to show me around everything. And there were about 150 trucks there, all connected up with various cables and stuff like that. And they had their own generators and launching pads and God knows what. Anyway, he took me a sort of a cook's tour around all this and explained what everything did. And then I said, well, if you wanted to fire a missile, how long would it take you to set up all the trucks and get it ready to fire? And he said, oh, it'd probably take about 6 or 7 hours. And I said, how long would it take to disable the equipment and pack it all up and drive away again? Oh, and he said, that'll be about an hour and a half, no, at least an hour and a half. I said, that's interesting. And I said, how long would it be before the enemy detected you'd fired a missile at them and be able to locate where you were? Oh, he said about 6 seconds. So I said, oh, this has been a very interesting thing. I think I'll go now. So I went. My God. Now, another interesting thing we had was popping along the Autobahn to Berlin from a checkpoint start at a place called Helmstedt. And you'd go along this Autobahn to get to Berlin, and there we were. So I arrived at Helmstedt ready to go to Berlin with my car, and I had a little bit of paper which I had to give to the Russian officer, and I gave it to him, and he said, are you in the British Army? And I said, no, I'm in the Australian Army, attached to the British Army. Oh, he said, that's interesting. He'd sort of thought about this for a while. He said, you're not actually in the British Army? I said, no, I'm in the Australian Army attached to the British Army. And I'm off to the British Signal Squadron in Berlin for a training and so forth. And he said, oh, all right. And so anyway, stamped the paper and away I went. I noticed that whilst I was there were some American officers waiting to go, and they were there when I arrived, and they were still there when I left. One of the characteristics of their prolonged stay was the fact that every time this Russian officer walked past this American major, he'd take a drag on his cigarette and blow the smoke into the Russian officer's face. So in actual fact he was there for some considerable time, I think probably a few hours. Anyway, that was that, so off we went to Berlin. Coming back from Berlin, I thought, well, I'll see if I can shortcut the procedure a bit. So coming back, we had to report to a funny little ticket box thing. It's a small room with a roll-up shutter for a ticket box. It's like an old railway ticket box window. Anyway, I went in there, and the ticket box opened and a hand came out belonging to the Russian officer on the other side of the wall. And so not to be outdone, I took his hand and shook it and said, how do you do? And he drew his hand in horror. But needless to say, my delay at that end, would you believe it, was something between 40 and 55 seconds, and I was moving on again. So that was when I explained all this to the guys back in the mess, they said, how do you get through so quickly? And I said, I shook his hand and said, how do you do? And we all roared with laughter. I thought it was very funny. And they're going to turn off now.